What I want to talk about today is, first of all, I want to talk about goals, why it's so important to have goals, to have a strategy and to make those strategic decisions. I do want to talk about one strategic decision, increasing sales. I want to talk about profits, a very undervalued topic, I feel like, which should be discussed way more. And then, we have a quick takeaway and, of course, a Q&A with everybody. I do want to get a little bit of input from you as well. I will ask you a couple of questions, so don't be shy. Please give me a hand when you feel something applies to you. I do want to start talking about goals because it's one of those things that is always forgotten a little bit. So I remember when I was in business school, one of the first things we learned was every company needs to set goals. They need to be there, otherwise you don't know where the company is heading. And everybody was just sitting there kind of rolling their eyes. We all thought, duh, of course. And over the course of my career, I figured, actually, we're not really doing that. And most of the companies I worked at, I just realized that people just forget to set those goals. So that's why I want to take a brief moment to talk about goals, why it's so important to set them, and how goals have to be to make them good for a strategic decision. And why goals are so important, I always realize when it comes to people getting married. I don't know, I think we all have a friend who always tries to lose some weight. It's usually 10 pounds, and it never works. The moment they have their wedding day planned, those 10 pounds are gone because they have a goal and they will get there. So I feel like we kind of have to learn from that and make sure we set ourselves goals to make sure we achieve them. So I went to business school, as you can tell, so I want to talk about SMART goals a little bit. What do we need in regards to goals? So we need goals that are specific. I speak to a lot of companies that say, well, we want to, make more money, we want to be more successful. That's not a specific goal. We all want that. You have to have a specific goal, like I want to increase my revenue in this vertical by 25% within a year. That's a specific goal. Goals have to be measurable. And of course, when they're not specific, you can measure them. So becoming the best in the industry is one of those examples, something you can measure. But if you want to become a market leader in the industry, that's something that can be measured. And I don't know who has been in New York. There are a lot of places that say they have the best pizza. It's kind of the same thing. How can you measure that? Goals also have to be attainable. We always want to think that everything is possible, but not everything is possible. We have to make sure we have the energy, we have the resources to get that goal, and we have to set ourselves realistic goals as well. I worked in a company, actually started in a company that had completely unrealistic goals. And the founder said, I want to set the goals here, realistic is here, because I want people to end up kind of here. What happened was we had completely unrealistic goals, everybody was unmotivated, and nobody ever achieved what they were supposed to achieve. And it created a very bad environment. And as you can tell, I'm not there anymore, so they have to be attainable. You have to be able to achieve them. You can shoot for something that's a challenge, but don't shoot for the stars. And they also have to be relevant. They have to be relevant for your business. If you have a local business, globalization, going global might not be the right goal for you. I remember telling my father that he should increase his sales, and I gave him a couple of ideas. And he sat me down and he said, Sophie, I'm a dentist. I want to help people. I don't want to increase my sales. So yes, not every goal is relevant for every business. And then, because I'm German, obviously love this one the most, you need deadlines. Goals have to be timely. You have to make sure you just don't set yourself a goal. You also have to know until when do I want to achieve this goal, because otherwise it doesn't become measurable. When do you set the deadline for that goal? So there are different ways of increasing sales, and it's fun to see how clients set themselves different goals and have different activities to achieve that they have higher sales, higher revenue. There's cold calling, which I think is kind of dead. I don't like when people call me. It's 2017. I don't pick up. It's never happening. Cold emailing, there are Google ads, video ads, image videos. People have strategic partnerships. You can go to industry conferences for a specific topic. LinkedIn became a big channel. Reference partner programs with your own customers. This is all to get new sales, new business in the company. But you can also work with your existing clients and make sure you get more revenue from them. Interestingly, when I talk to clients about the different activities they're doing, I always hear that they don't really know which one works. They are working with a lot of different activities, but they don't really know what is the one that actually brings in revenue and they have actually success with. So it's interesting to see how the industry changes a little bit in the direction of sales. When I started, a lot of companies didn't have sales forces. They just worked with project managers. The owner would do a lot of the sales themselves. But nowadays, I see that a lot of people are trying to hire salespeople that are actually there to bring in new business, to bring in new customers. Now I want to talk about my favorite thing, how can Plunet help with that, with your sales strategy? How can Plunet help you being on that track? And first of all, a lot of our clients actually use Plunet as a customer relationship management tool and have it help you with the sales pipeline. Because in the end of the day, you need the data in Plunet when you're working on projects. So there's a lot you can do. You can work with statuses. You can create your own statuses for the customers. You can create completely customized statuses as well. So the property section became also a filter opportunity for customer relationship management and sales management. So you can set up statuses where you are with a prospect or a client in the pipeline. So for example, if you're first contact, I send a product overview. So you can really stay on track with where you are with your prospects. And I know it's not a very salesy industry, so you want to make sure you really consult people on what kind of language services they need. So it's good but it's still good to stay on track with where you are with them in the process, because the sales process can be long. Also the task section, it's one of those things I always tell everybody to use extensively. Use the tasks, set up the information you have with the client, with your prospect, and then you can really follow up with your sales pipeline. You can see in Plunet what's the last task I completed with that customer or with that prospect. I can see what's the next task that is due. I can see the status if I set it up. So you can really use it to have your customized sales tool you need to work with your sales pipeline. And then we have marketing. So I was talking about all the different activities you can have, like Google Ads, cold calling, email campaigns, to bring in new people. But in the end of the day, especially because you don't sell, the sales cycles are not super quick. It takes a while. So how can you make sure you know and you have an actual tracking of how good your activities are? So what you can do, you can set up, for example, the source of contact. Where did I meet a prospect? Where did I make the first contact? So you can track that and you can add all the different activities you do. If you have a new activity, you can just add it to your property. And then if you tag your new prospect or your new client with it and also activate this property for projects, the system will automatically always add that property value to a project, which means that in the end of the day, if you are using this correctly, you can run reports where you just put in your activity, for example, the cold calling is 2017, and then you can see exactly how much revenue did I make with that, and also how much profit did I make with that. So after 3 years, you can see an actually pretty good result list of the activities you were doing. So that is one of those things I really hope a lot of people will use those properties to create data to make strategic decisions on. Do I still need to go to this conference? After 5 years, maybe I've met a couple of people, but I didn't sign any deals. I haven't made any revenue with that after this conference. Maybe it doesn't even make sense to go there anymore. We're spending a lot of money on marketing, so it should be targeted. I don't know why, but in the last couple of months, we have been talking about profits a lot, because a lot of focus is on sales and not a lot of focus is on profits. This is a picture of Chelsea Market, and that's where I live, in Chelsea, in New York, and it's an actual picture. And I wanted to use it because we are all in this for a reason. We do translation because we want to make money. So we don't want to work for free. In this case, Chelsea Market worked for free and gave us a Spanish to English translation. Actually, an English to Spanish translation. So that's why I was choosing this picture today. So why are we working for free sometimes? And it actually happens a lot. So only because you have a high sales volume doesn't mean that you actually have a healthy business. You do have to also look at the bottom line. And if you're not a startup and you're trying to sell your business, or if you're a non-profit, of course, then you also don't need to concentrate on that so much. You should look at your profits rather than only your sales. A big client might look good on paper, but if you really look into the numbers, it might not even be profitable to have them, which basically means you're just working for free. And I talked to a lot of customers that started after implementing Plunet, identifying those customers, because Plunet helps them track to see exactly how much money do I make with them, do I make money, or am I actually losing money with the customer? And unfortunately, those are usually the ones you wouldn't expect. Those are usually the ones that have a good brand name, and there are reasons to keep, of course, some of those clients, but some of them can really become picture a terror client that terrorizes staff and takes more money than they bring in. So I looked at the ALC survey results. That's a conference in the US, and almost 50% of the respondents said that they are paying their salespeople based on gross revenue, not on profits. Only 16% are paying on gross profits and 8% on net profits internationally. As you can see, I also have the US numbers in a comparison, because I can see in the US that the focus is stronger on profits nowadays. So a lot of our clients actually pay their salespeople and their project managers based on the gross profit of a project. A project needs to be profitable to get a commission, which means if you're bringing a big project and it's not profitable in the end, you are not getting the commission, because a commission, of course, means you're paying, if you pay commission on a not profitable project, you're actually losing a lot of money. Anybody here who pays commissions based on profits rather than revenues? Okay, so we have a little bit of a mix. So I really think like a lot of is heading that way, because we have to make sure we are investing in customers that are good for the business, sustainable customers that help us grow, rather than just looking at revenue. So a couple of strategic decisions our clients were making to get there I thought were very interesting. One of them was specializing into something. So we have clients that were saying, I just said goodbye to things I was doing for a long time, because I realized I'm actually specializing into translation for research. So everything else actually is more of a hassle. I'm not making that many profits. So it makes it easier to always be the go-to person for that. And it's actually more profitable. I have all my marketing material targeted to that. And I'm not trying to do everything. I'm specializing in one thing. And they realized their profit margins were going up because they were specializing. Kind of the opposite, which I really liked, came from one of my clients in Utah. They were diversifying. So they realized that they have clients that need other services as well, and they're always asking for them. They were asking for interpreting services, even though they only did translation. And they said no for the longest time. After a while, they realized, well, this is low-hanging fruit. Somebody wants to work with me on that. So they started an interpreting business as well to offer both, and now the interpreting business is actually the most profitable part of the business. So diversifying can also be a strategy to get there and get more profits. Another thing is changing your targets, which we already kind of touched on. So why concentrating so much on sales goals when you can actually set yourself profit goals? So one of our clients 1 year had this vision of only focusing on sales goals, on profit goals, and set that up in the whole company. And it was very, very surprising how much that actually helped. They rose their profit margin by 20%. And I asked a couple of times because I couldn't believe it, because I thought that was a lot. So yeah, concentrating on profit, having the company have a feeling for how important profits are. Then one of my favorite topics right now is fighting the price pressure. We all know that it's really hard when the word price is very competitive. It's a competitive market. So having a focus on solutions, having a focus on the value you're creating for that customer, rather than focusing on the words, on the commodity you're offering that client. So a lot of customers had great success with that, looking at the solutions they were providing, helping a client reach other customers, going into a new market, focusing on those goals and those solutions rather than focusing on words and word rates. And then last but not least, it's a little controversial, but basically firing clients. Renegotiating with your customers, looking at your profit margins and deciding this client is not profitable anymore and having this discussion. So I talked to 3 customers who actually did that. And they let go of a client and they didn't see any change in their profit. In their revenue they did, but not in their profits because their client did not bring in anything. And usually those clients are the ones that are also hard on staff. So it was really interesting to see that. Also, of course, you don't need to fire a client right away, but you can talk about profitability and maybe just raise your prices. And one of my clients said, well, you would be surprised. A lot of them stay, and then you have a profitable client all of a sudden. So being bold enough to have this conversation and make sure you're not working for free. Because we would not do that anywhere else. If anybody would say, I have a job for you, you will make $100, but it costs $50 to get there by train, you need to buy a new jacket for $30, and you need to spend $20 on food, everybody would say, no, I'm not going to do it. Did I do the math correctly? Did anybody follow that? Okay, good. I wasn't sure. I saw some blank faces. And so yeah, those things are important. We don't want to work for free. Does anybody here have you fired a client before? I knew you would say you did. Actually, a couple of people have done it. That's great. I really feel, yeah, it's a partnership. You both have to profit, and we have to not get into this situation. Even though there are good reasons to keep a client, very often they're a high name brand, so you want to have this client name on your portfolio. Understandable, because it gives you credibility. You have clients that bring you new customers constantly. Are you waving or just, okay, just making sure. Then you have, maybe you want to do a social impact, you do nonprofit work where of course the profit margin doesn't matter. You have customers that bring a big portion of your revenue, so you need the liquidity, so you can't just be like, oh, 50% of my revenue is gone because you still have fixed cost. Of course, those things have to be taken into consideration. Maybe you're working with somebody for a long time, even though I have clients who say, well, loyalty is not everything, and even if you work with somebody, they still have to be profitable. And then, of course, you have a couple of clients where you just exchange services with, where it makes sense in the end. I mean, we all know that we have our queries and our gross profit queries. So when you want to specialize, you can really look at all the different types of translation. I hope everybody tracks the different types of translation and services they're offering. So you can really see, if you use that property, what are the different margins I'm making? Maybe if legal translation brings me the biggest profit margin, maybe I should concentrate on that and become a specialist in that field. Changing your targets. Plunet gives you the opportunity to set profit margin targets. So you can have it for the whole company, you can have it per client. If you have interpreting and translation, you can have it per project type. And you can check the history to really set realistic goals and make sure you're tracking them. So what a lot of clients were saying would really help was having the staff on board, giving incentives for staff meeting their goals. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to pay them commission, but maybe just giving them a bonus if they're hitting the targets you discuss with them. That client I'm talking about actually sat down with every single one of their employees and had very specific goals for everybody. And yeah, set those goals together, of course, in a communication and having meetings to see if they're met. And what also helps is setting an approval step. If you don't hit the margin, say why, what happened. Was it because the project had to go out right away, so I had to go to an agency? Usually I would have gone to a freelance. I didn't take the time. But he was saying just implementing that already instantly had an influence because people were thinking about it. Because if you look at your profit margin, you're just like, okay, I know if I go through a freelancer, it will be a little cheaper. Usually I would go to an agency just to, have it out of my way, but kind of going that extra mile. But of course, you always have to be careful. Those have to be flexible, so giving them the opportunity to say why they made that decision. the renegotiating phase also Plunet can be really helpful to get to that point because you have all the data there. So if you add an hourly wage for all your project managers in Plunet, you can track when they book time on projects. You can actually track that in your profit margin. So you don't just track what do you outsource, how much do I pay for freelancers, how much do I pay for internal staff. You can also track how much time did one of my project managers spend with this. And actually starting doing that is what made most of the clients I talked to decide against working with a couple of clients, because they just saw how many hours go into all those projects, and because it's fixed cost, they had never looked at it before. So if you have your project managers book time on projects, you can actually see how the profit margin changes for different customers. And then, of course, you can check in queries gross profit summary, you can see all of your clients, and then see the difference. So here you can see we have expense 1, which is the price, and then expense 2 is the hours. So if you want to book that time, you can really have it in your margin. Value is kind of, it feels hard to measure. But you can actually really set up what is the solution I'm offering my client. And the solution is not just translation. The solution could be, I connected my customer to existing client base because all of a sudden they could communicate with their clients in their native language. Or I created a culture-appropriate branding image because sometimes people go abroad with their branding and they don't know that in Asia that might not look as good as it did in the United States. Or you helped signing a deal because you brokered with the languages. Or maybe you even prevented legal actions because you provided a translation in a specific company, in a specific language. So if you track that in projects, you get very different reports. So you can actually see how many words did I translate to help people going into another market. So you can create different marketing material. You can really concentrate on solutions and back that up with data when you're talking to clients. So yeah, this is just a couple of things you can do in Plunet. I know you can go on for hours and get deep into that. So very important, define goals. Everybody should have clearly defined goals. Every year there should be goals, or every quarter, to make sure you know where you're heading. Then also create data in Plunet. Plunet is not just a project management tool. Plunet is also there to create the data you can use to make your strategic decisions. So create that data, analyze the data. Don't just have the data sitting there without making decisions based on it. Oh yeah, there it is, analyze the data. And then last but not least, yeah, make the decision. I'm getting ahead of myself, ahead of my slides. So yeah, this is what I wanted to share with you today.